Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to a very, very special Between Takes episode of Missing Frames. I am your host, Shawn Eastridge. Here on Missing Frames, we typically watch all the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives, but all of us here have seen these movies, so this is kind of breaking up the concept a little bit, but it's okay, because we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of a landmark film in the superhero genre. And
Star Trek V.
Star Trek V, ladies and gentlemen, the final frontier. It's what you are all clamoring to hear about. But before we get to Star Trek V, we are going to be going through I was about to say the entire Batman series. We're not doing that. We're doing from 89 to 97, those 4 Batman movies that made up the late 80s and 90s. Started by Burton and smashed and burned by Schumacher. And I needed to get some wonderful, beautiful people on the show to help me out. And those people are Brad Gullickson and Aaron Prescott of the Rest in Pictures podcast. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us once again.
I'm of a mind to make some mookie. Let's do this.
This is something. Now we were talking about this. It came up spontaneously. We a few episodes back did Ed Wood, which is a movie I had not seen before. And near the end of that episode, it kind of jokingly it was thrown out that we should just do the Batman movies and try to help me appreciate Tim Burton's Batman movies in particular, because for those of you out there who don't know, I've never been a big fan of the Tim Burton Batman movies. I'm not really a big fan of this initial series in general, and my dislike of his Batman movies has kind of painted my opinion of Tim Burton. But watching Ed Wood gave me a new appreciation for him. Seeing movies like Beetlejuice and things like that. I don't know. I've definitely learned to appreciate him, if not necessarily love him, and I wanted to revisit the Batman movies from the mindset of watching it with that kind of understanding. But I don't know. This is going to be a fascinating episode, I think, because we were all chatting, and it became very clear that none of us are going to agree with each other on anything here. But
so, Shawn, are you telling me that before this rewatch, you were a greater fan of the Schumacher films, the Batman Forever and Batman and Robin?
That's 100% accurate, Brad. I'm glad you brought that up. And
okay.
We could just put that out there.
Let's do this. Let's do this.
This is going to be crazy, and we'll get to it when we get to those movies. Trust me. I've been preaching this for years, so I'm ready for this. But
I'm not.
This is gonna be great. So 1989. Let's just kick things off. 1989 Batman. Aaron, we'll start with you. Do you remember the first time you saw this movie? What your thoughts were? Like, did you love it right away? What was it like, that first experience?
No, I don't remember when I saw it. It was 89, so I would have been 5. I don't believe I saw this in the theaters, so I'm sure I just wore it out on VHS so many times. But I remember loving it, and I remember, I think one thing to definitely talk about when we're talking about the Batman films is the merchandising that comes along, because this is like, even though it's 89, we're going to be talking about true 90s tentpole, blockbuster movies. And, the comic book movies before comic book movies were comic book movies. And so I remember having the Batman action figure, the one with that had the yellow part of his belt that was part of the Batarang, and was connected to a piece of string. And I had Bob the henchman. I didn't have the
Bob
Joker.
Bob the Goon, sir. Bob the Goon.
Bob the Goon? Is it the Goon? It's not henchman?
It's the Goon. No, it's Bob the Goon.
Well, he was a henchman to me. And I didn't have the Joker, but and another piece of merchandising that completely, took my brain by storm was the Batman 89 breakfast cereal. I loved that stuff. It was essentially just the Mr. T cereal, just reformatted into a bat symbol. But yeah, it was like it was a great movie for me. Watched it over and over again, but definitely not in the theaters or anything like that.
Brad, what about you?
I remember seeing it in the theater. I remember it was one of the first films that I saw where I had to wait a significant amount of time to actually get into the theater to watch it. And I remember being so anxious before the film started that when the credits begin and you get the Danny Elfman score and the way that the camera flies through the logo, like I was having like a near panic attack because I couldn't handle what was about to happen. And then I remember how the film just jumps right into the back alleys of Gotham, and you're following this family as these two crooks track the family. And I'm like, oh my God, we're about to watch Bruce's parents get murdered. We're about to watch Bruce's parents get murdered. And then I remember seeing Batman already in costume, and I was just utterly shocked. And and amazed that we were already in the thick of it with this character. And I to this day I still really appreciate the structure of the '89 Batman for that reason. I think over time my appreciation for the movie has waned a little bit, and we can get into that in a little bit. But I still get a tremendous wave of nostalgic joy every time that opening credits starts.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys brought that up, because one of the big things about Batman was the marketing, and it was just like a juggernaut from what my understanding, just reading about it and watching the documentaries, and it was such a cultural event, and the poster and the casting and getting Burton involved, it was just so gigantic. And what's funny is it wasn't like the movie was huge, but it wasn't like Star Wars huge. But for some reason, it's like, and when people look back on it, I feel like no one really talks about it with that same kind of like admiration as like Star Wars. But there's this vibe of like, if you lived through that, it felt like just as big. Like
I don't think you can talk about the film without talking about the blockbuster culture.
Yeah. It feels so much like that. And it almost, reading about that gives me a more of an appreciation for the movie, and just like what it must have been like as an experience, and just being part of that kind of cultural, just feeling the excitement of it. The first time I saw it, it wasn't until I think probably Batman Returns had come out. I was, when the first Batman came out in theaters, I was around 3 years old, so I was definitely not going to be allowed to see it. I wasn't allowed to see Batman Returns. I was watching Adam West Batman, and I thought it was the greatest thing on the planet. And I remember my aunt and uncle, they had like just a vast collection of VHSs. They had so many movies. I saw Indiana Jones for the first time at their place, like tons of movies that I like. Temple of Doom was my first Indiana Jones, and I was definitely too young to see that movie. But Batman was another one. And I remember as a kid, I was about 6 years old, and just being like, this is so cool. This is so cool. It is so clear I'm not allowed to be watching this movie because it's dark and it's violent and it's really, really intense. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I had no concept of really like what a lot of people had when this movie was released, which is like the only thing they knew about was the camp. So the fact that they were making a serious Batman movie, I think threw people off completely. And everyone was up in arms about Michael Keaton being cast, and they were like, he's going to ruin it. It's going to be campy, just like the Adam West show. And I think a lot of people's reaction, at least initial reactions, were just relief. Like, were driven by the fact that it was like, oh, it is dark. It is twisted. But as a kid,
I'll tell you what, I sure am glad that we're, as a society, we're completely over getting upset at Batman casting.
Absolutely.
Of, who will be putting on the cowl and cape. I'm glad we're over that.
We've learned our lesson for sure. We've come a long way. But yeah, I mean, I'm lying. I'm a little bit misleading when I say I've never enjoyed the Burton movies, because when I was young, like I thought, I was like, yeah, this is a cool movie. I like this. and it's that was really it. It just felt like a movie that was like I could tell it was a little dangerous, and I probably shouldn't have been watching it. And that's, I think, a lot of the appeal of it for me.
Well, it does go a long way in shattering the previous popular image of Batman. And, that transition was already happening in the comic books of the 80s with Frank Miller and Alan Moore. Batman was growing up, becoming the dark, grim Avenger, stepping away from what we had seen in the 60s and 70s of the character, which is kind of interesting looking back, because if you compare the 89 Batman to, say, The Dark Knight or Zack Snyder's iteration, the Burton one's pretty darn campy compared to those guys.
That's what was kind of funny. Whenever I revisit it, I feel it doesn't feel that dark to me. I think that's what I mean. I think when the movie came out, it was such an event, and people were so shocked by the fact that it wasn't the TV show that it kind of covered over the fact that it was still a little goofy and a little campy and a little stylized in a way that wasn't quite serious. Like, it wasn't completely serious.
I think it's really like Tim Burton's style of dark. It's very it's very much like a Hot Topic dark. It's that sort of edge that goes to it. Like, oh, I'm mysterious and moody, but I still pay taxes on all these shirts, and they come custom fitted, and so I really dug his style, and I'm sure we'll get into what happens in Returns, but I'd always just kind of gravitated towards Batman and Joker and having Prince on a soundtrack. It all just like meshed so well.
We're all going to do the bat dance now, right?
Yeah, we are.
I've been doing it this whole time. Has nobody else? Oh my God. But yeah, it's funny, Brad, you mentioned kind of gradually as you've gotten a little older and seen more, like that you've kind of, your love for the movie has kind of waned. Are there things about the movie that just don't work as well for you now, that maybe in the context of the Nolan trilogy or just other Batman stories?
I think or I should say I want something a little different from comic book movies, especially of characters that I really cherish, like Batman, like the Joker. I have ideas of what those should be. And now that we've had so many different cinematic adaptations of those characters, we've had many, many flavors of them. And there are flavors that I gravitate towards over others. And what we have here is much more of a Tim Burton experience and less of a Batman experience, or it's much more of a Jack Nicholson experience than it is a Joker experience. And
yeah.
I think there was a time, maybe even 5 years ago or 10 years ago, where I was really down on the 89 Batman, but I've come around as somebody who appreciates how Tim Burton took what he loved of the Adam West 66 series and then just put that goth sensibility on top. He really takes these core concepts of the DC characters created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane and does his thing with it. And that's kind of what's really cool about the more iconic characters that have lasted for so many years. You can take a Batman, you can take a Superman, and you can transform them into any style you want. And that's what they've been doing in the comics forever. You can find humor, you can find dark and gritty, you can find just straight up weird and bizarre. You can find esoteric and ethereal versions of the character. And it's really about what does the writer see in this model. And that's now, as we've had so many directors take on Batman, I really want people just to put their personalities onto these skeletons.
What's really interesting about this first Batman, watching it again in the context of trying to appreciate it as a Tim Burton movie, one of the things that struck me is that despite the style, there's a distinct style to the movie, there's a distinct aesthetic to the movie, and in some ways it feels like Burton, but in some ways it feels very like the studio was constantly coming in and saying, no, we can't go too far in that direction. In some ways it didn't really feel like a Tim Burton movie to me. Does anyone else get that vibe from this first Batman movie? It feels a little bit, you know what it reminds me of? A little bit is the first Spider-Man movie compared to the second Spider-Man movie. Like the first one's a little more contained, a little more inside the box to fit the studio mold, and then once that's a success, the studio's a little bit more willing to be like, "Hey, have at it, do what you want."
Burton is still on a leash with the '89 Batman, and he is let off it in Batman Returns. But I don't think you can watch the '89 Batman and not either connect or recognize the aesthetic that is seeping in there from Burton's personality, as witnessed in Beetlejuice and Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like, watching it this time, I swear to you guys, I promise, I really, really tried. It is so hard for me to like this movie. I have such a bias against it. And what really happened is, just to go back to my first viewing, as I started to get older, I've always been a big Superman fan. So I started to watch Batman, and it just started to feel more like, I was like, this is kind of like, none of these characters are likable. None of these people, like, Batman isn't heroic. He's kind of just like a creepy psycho, just like the Joker. He's not really fighting for anything. He's just sort of weird. And I think that kind of turned me, and I was like, and of course, growing up in high school, a bunch of people were like, well, Superman's lame and Batman's cool. And I was like, well, maybe I'm just lame. Maybe I don't get it. Like, no, you can't. You can't. But that's what I felt like. I felt like, well, maybe it's just like, the Joel Schumacher movies are ridiculous and stupid, but like even the Burton movies I never really got into. And I was like, well, maybe Batman's just a character I don't really like or get. And I thought that for a long time until I saw Nolan's Batman Begins. And then it all clicked with me. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I was missing. I never understood the character. I finally do. And then I went back and I read Batman Year One, The Dark Knight Returns, and I was like, this character, he's been there this whole time. And my dislike of Burton's Batman was almost a resentment. Like, how dare you make me think I didn't like Batman for all these years? It's like, it's completely unfair to him, but it's like this resentment that's built up inside me. So I swear to you guys, I tried so hard to watch this movie without that personal bias coming in, but I can't do it. I just can't do it. And part of it, I think, is the fact that I need the connection to the character, and you don't really get it in this movie. There isn't really an explanation as to who Batman is, who Bruce Wayne is, why he's doing what he's doing. Even the Joker gets like more of an origin story than Batman. It feels like every character in this movie has more going for them than Batman, and that's what I think at the core of Batman '89 really it holds it back for me. Like I just can't get
don't you think
into
that's
it.
at the core of these first four Batman's problems as a whole?
Yes, with the exception of Batman Forever, which we'll get to.
No, we're not there yet, Sean. We're not there yet.
But how do you guys see what I'm saying? Like, it feels like in retrospect, a lot of people have been like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Like, Batman is really like kind of the bland character in this movie. I don't know. What do you guys feel about Batman and Bruce Wayne as a whole?
Aaron, you want to take this?
No, I think just as no, you're wrong. I think just as a mysterious character, having this mysterious background, and like Brad said, how it didn't come about in like a straight narrative like Superman the movie did, where we see the origin story, we see his planet, we see how he grew up, how he finally got the cape and all that stuff. We're thrown right into it, and so we're having to piece these little things together. And in a time where that's legitimately like the number 2 comic book character movie, the second superhero movie, it's kind of refreshing to kind of have that take to kind of be mysterious and to be dark and be brooding. And I loved Michael Keaton's portrayal of that character. I think it worked really well. And just kind of piecing it together. Yeah, Joker had more of an origin story, but I like that metamorphosis of a character. But I think by showing the origin of the Joker, there's the thing that Burton likes to do is show the duality of that character and how Batman is just as much of a psychopath as the Joker is. And I think he really shows that a lot in both movies, in Batman and Batman Returns. I think he shows both sides of it. And there was one part that I really focused in on this time was when he walks into Vicky Vale's apartment for the first time, and Bruce is walking around and he says, "Wow, nice place," or lots of room or something like that.
Space.
He talks to her, lots of space, and then Joker comes in 3 minutes later and says the exact same thing, and I was like, oh, okay. So I like that. I like that mysteriousness and that kind of evolution of the character by showing us more of the Joker.
My problems with the film, I would echo a lot of what Shawn said. I agree that it's not Batman's movie. It is Joker's film, and as a Batman fan and a member of the Batman fam, I would want more time devoted to the psychology of Bruce Wayne. And to Aaron's point, they are mirrored images of each other. They're both very broken people. And that is an idea that Alan Moore and Brian Boland explored in Batman the Killing Joke, which came out just a few years before this. And I would encourage our listeners to jump on over to the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel, where Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg do an hour-long dissection. Actually, it's not Jim Rugg. It's Ed Piskor and Tom Scioli. They do an hour-long dissection of Batman the Killing Joke and talk about the duality of the Joker and Batman and how Commissioner Gordon fits into all that. It's fascinating. Go watch that.
Go ahead.
Well, Burton and I think DC Comics and the producers of this film take that idea up of these two broken individuals, and what's the difference between a guy who dresses up like a bat and a guy who dresses up like a clown and punch each other. And so there's a jewel of that in the '89 Batman. It's not quite explored further as further as it could. That's not a right sentence, but you know what I mean.
Just go with it.
As far as it could, because Burton is kind of like Guillermo del Toro, where he's in love with the monster. And he could be in love with the monster that is Batman, but instead he's in love with the monster that is Jack Nicholson and the Joker.
Yes,
and
100%.
That steals too much of the movie's attention.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest thing is I completely see what Aaron's saying, because I did get that. It's like the idea of what separates Batman from the Joker. And all the great Batman stories do ask that question, and they do answer it. And the difference is that Batman doesn't kill. Batman is the hero. Batman does what he does because it's right. In this movie, there is no answer. It's like there isn't really anything that separates them, except Batman is trying to murder criminals and Joker's trying to murder innocent people. There's something about it that just feels like really twisted to me.
Yes, because it is. The core problem with Batman is that he has a hole in his soul, because when his parents were murdered by a criminal in an alleyway, he has his childhood stolen from him, and his whole purpose is to regain his life by making sure that never happens again to another child. And in the pursuit of that vengeance quest, he loses some of himself, so he has to constantly be self-regulating. And that's what a Batman story should be. That's what Batman Begins is. That's what The Dark Knight is. That's what so many great Batman stories are. And 89 does touch on it a little bit, but doesn't really, it gets lost in the weeds.
I think the problem is Bruce Wayne. You need to have a kind of an anchor almost, and Bruce Wayne is such a confusing character. And this is, I want to be clear, I think Michael Keaton is so good in the two Batman movies he did. I think he's really, really good. I really wish I could have seen him in one that I was like, yes, this is a great Batman. I think he looks great, and I think he has the kind of he's got the right vibe, but I think the problem is Bruce Wayne is such an enigma, and not in the way that it's like interesting. It's in a way where it's like, what is this character? He's like lonely, but he wants to bang like all the hot reporters that come interview him. And that seems to be something he's like genuinely interested in like being with her, but for no real reason. But then,
well, the Vicky Vale stuff is terrible.
Yeah. And then it's like the romance just feels undercooked, but it's like, I couldn't get a handle on him. Like, it's like, why?
Yeah.
So what motivated him to dress up like a bat? Nothing, as far as I can tell. There's a cave beneath the manor, and maybe he was like, well, I
mean, the only thing I would say about that to counter that is the conversation that Vicky Vale and Robert Wool's reporter character have when they find out that Bruce Wayne's parents were killed in that alley, and they're looking over the photographs of the old newspapers. Like, there is a sorrow there that you see on Kim Basinger's face as Vicky Vale that, like, I connect to emotionally. Like, that's probably one of the most powerful moments in the entire film. But again, it's fleeting, and we never really see that pain from Bruce Wayne's point of view.
Yeah. Aaron, say something to us.
Tim Burton doesn't know how to shoot an action shot to save his life.
That was the other thing. And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the Batman. The problem with Batman in this movie is, okay, we don't know why he decided to dress up like a giant bat. Why, I don't know. It's scary. Like, it's never explained in the movie, but it's also like, what's the angle of that? You know, what I love about Batman Begins is that it goes through every step of the process more than I think any Batman story ever has.
It had never been done before. That is,
never
even
been
in the
before.
comic books, it had never been done the way it had been done in Batman Begins.
Exactly. They explain, here's why he does it. I love the idea of this childhood trauma. For him, bats are the thing he fears, so naturally he would make that the symbol he would use to frighten others. But like in this movie, he's just dressed in a suit. So the fight scenes in particular, it's just like, oh, he punches a guy. You know, in Batman Begins, he's like in the shadows, snatching guys up. It's like a horror movie. And in this, he's just like running down the street, punching a guy in the face.
They could not build a suit where he could turn his head for like 20 years.
Maybe that's part of the problem. But like, I don't know. I agree, Aaron. I think that's
especially in this first movie, like, Burton gets the silhouette perfect. Like, it just looks, you know, you put a nice bright light behind that guy and some smoke, and, you know, fill it with shadows, and it looks perfect. You get up close to that costume, and it looks like it was just made out of an old rubber tire, and you feel so bad for Michael Keaton and what he has to put up with to get in that suit.
It's very stiff.
But I think going back to you know, what Burton wasn't able to contribute as much to the Batman character. Yeah, he's able to do the Batman stuff, but yeah, the action isn't really there. But also, you know, if you're not going to be able to execute the action, he also doesn't really execute him as a detective as much.
No.
Like, there's one small scene where, like, he figures out, don't put this lotion with this perfume, and that's it. Other than that, it's not really much detective work going on.
Even the Nolan films don't deal with the detective stuff. I'm still waiting for the Dark Knight detective movie.
I think you're right. I mean, I was thinking about that with, you know, this 4 that we kind of, you know, set ourselves on, and probably the best iteration of Batman as a detective is Paul Dini, you know, in the animated series.
Correct.
I thought we were going to say Batman Forever, but we'll get to that.
No, I was not. I wasn't.
No, we weren't.
But
I know we've been talking a lot about the 89 Batman. We've got many more Batman to talk about. But Shawn, is there anything about this 89 version that, you know, gets you a little excited?
There are things I really like. I love some of the Joker's lines when his girlfriend, he's checking himself out in the mirror, and she puts her hand on his shoulder and goes, "You look fine." And he looks at her and goes, "I didn't ask," and looks at her hand, and she just removes it. Jack Nicholson is having a ball. It's some of it's funny, some of it doesn't really work for me. It just feels like Tim Burton was really like, "All right, Jack, just do your thing," without much guidance. So it really is like just Jack Nicholson, manic Jack Nicholson, in the same way it's manic Jim Carrey in Batman Forever. So I do like Michael Keaton. I think he's got some really cool moments in this. I love the art gallery when they do the whole dancing to the Party Man song and painting, and when Batman comes in, their interactions. I love that whole action sequence where they're kind of trying to escape the Joker. And he has the shields on his car. I love all of that. As a kid, that was like, yes, this is cool. Stuff is happening. Batman's fighting the bad guys. Michael Keaton really is the highlight of this movie for me. It's very, very difficult for me to get into it because of the reasons I've listed. And I also love the Elfman score. But what about you, Brad?
I mean, I think we haven't talked enough about the sets of the 89 Batman. It's all shot in Pinewood Studios. In a lot of ways, it feels very small by today's standards. You look at Gotham City and there's like 3 street corners that you see throughout the entire film. But those street corners are stunning. I think the Gotham of the Tim Burton Batmans is without a doubt my favorite Gotham. It's cinematically, it's the most cartoonish, the most heightened and extreme, but it feels lived in. It feels gross. It feels steamy as all get out. Someone deal with all that sewer steam. You got a real infrastructure problem, Gotham City. So I love all that, and I mean, I love the Batmobile. I love the design of the Batwing. I love the church. And I love that score.
It's just crazy that are like one of our first big superhero movies, and it's like crossed between a superhero movie and German expressionism. So many deep shadows and just like weird angles, and it was just it's so bizarre looking, but so perfect because it did put you into like another world. Like you didn't feel like you felt like Gotham was just its own individual place.
Well, so much sorry, Aaron, I love interrupting you. You know that.
I know you do. You're good at it. Go.
Well, like right now, cinema is all about capturing a reality and a place, and we don't give a lot of love to the abstract. Like Wes Anderson does his thing, but in our Marvel movies, in our DC movies, we want our cities to look like cities. And I like the very comic book-iness of I'll say all 4 of these Batman movies. Like it is a unique world.
That's true. I do appreciate the production design. There's something about it. I just don't really get into it in this first Batman movie. It feels
not enough neon lights.
I needed more. I needed more Dutch angles. I need more neon.
more day glow. I get it. We'll get to it. Don't worry.
But I think it does. There's some cool stuff in this movie, and I try to give it props because I don't want to just be like, I hate it. But like there's so much about this movie that I can't possibly fathom in terms of the impact it had on the superhero genre. And the look of the film is incredibly important to that. But Aaron, did you want to finish your thought that Brad so rudely interrupted, or are you good to go?
No, it's already flown away. I feel like we should move on to returns.
All right.
The superior.
So let's go ahead.
Superior.
Let's go ahead and so on a scale of 1 to 5, Dances with the Devil in the Pale Moonlight, how many would you give Batman '89?
Brad,
I go first.
Yeah, go for it.
So when I'm talking to Shawn, I would give it 4 out of 5. But in reality, I give it 3 out of 5.
Aaron, what about you?
I think I'm right there with you. I want to bump it up for the naysayers of the world, but it's in the 3.5 world.
I give it a 2. Moving on. Batman Returns. Let's talk about Batman Returns. As we said, this is Tim Burton off the leash from the get-go. It's like, this is a Tim Burton movie, no question asked. It is so stylized. It has his weird sense of humor. It feels even less like a Batman movie and more like a personal film of his. But Brad, when did you first see Batman Returns?
Again, saw it in the theater. I was super stoked. I was probably just as anxious as I was when I wandered into the first Batman film. And from the jump, I was super disappointed as a child. I hated Batman Returns as a kid. I was like, what is this nonsense with a circus gang during Christmas? And why are they associated with the Penguin? I just don't understand the logistics of this criminal underworld. I thought the Penguin was gross and icky. He made me uncomfortable. The Catwoman made me feel funny downstairs, and I didn't understand that. And what happened to Vicky Vale? What happened? And it just really, really bothered me. Now, as I've gotten older, I love Batman Returns.
Oh God, Aaron, your turn.
Just quote unquote all that stuff that he just said. That's literally how I felt.
I hate Batman Returns. I will say this viewing, I think the last time I watched it, my hatred of it was so strong that it allowed me to not hate it as much this time around. But I am not a fan of this movie. I think the way I got through it this time was I was like, oh, it's a comedy. It's a dark comedy. I think I am so people have always been like, Burton's amazing. Oh, they're so dark and da-da-da. And I think I hadn't seen Returns in so long. And when I watched it, I was like, this is stupid. Like all the stuff that people start to like the villains being goofy and having punny jokes. That's all in Batman Returns. The weirdness, the stuff that doesn't make sense. Like it starts here and then it gets carried into Joel Schumacher. It turns family friendly as opposed to just weird and twisted. So I think a lot of my dislike was like, why do people like this so much when this movie feels just as stupid as like Batman Forever? It's just like through Tim Burton's filter. But for a lot of the reasons I don't like Batman that much, the first one, I really don't like Batman Returns. And I just don't know if I like Tim Burton's Batman as a whole. I can't get on that train. When I first saw this movie, I did like it again for the same reasons. I was a kid. I knew it was like, I'm not allowed to be watching this, so that's cool. But yeah, I remember being really disturbed. Like Batman 89 is pretty twisted, but Batman Returns is like mean spirited. Like there's a lot of gross stuff in this movie, and it just feels like Batman's already not heroic, so I don't like him. He's attaching bombs to people and killing people. Like, it just felt like I don't like Batman. He's kind of a despicable person. I don't like the Penguin. He's gross. Catwoman's just weird. And the humor just didn't work for me. So it just, a lot of things just don't work about this movie for me.
So just real quick question, and this might go into a tangent. You know, you've mentioned the fact that Batman kills in these first two films and how that doesn't really drive with your Boy Scouty, Superman-y worldview. Is that a strong departure for you? Like if you see that happen in a movie, is you go like, you know what, I can't identify with a hero, or I can't even appreciate or celebrate a hero that would take a life?
No, I don't think that's it, because you know, obviously there are plenty of heroes that do, like Iron Man and Captain America and things like that. There's something about the fact that it's because I think it's because Batman has nothing established. Like, I don't know what his moral compass is. And if he's supposed to be a hero, and we know that Batman is a hero based on the best versions of the character that we've seen.
I don't know. But shouldn't you only be addressing the context of the character through the film that you're experiencing in the moment?
I mean, that's possible, but I just don't like him. Like, it's like, I don't know who he is. I don't know why he does anything. What separates him from the bad guys? Nothing. So I just don't like. It's like, why do I care? I get what you're saying. I'm bringing a lot of my something. I swear to you guys. I know you don't believe me, but I swear to you, I tried to watch these as their own thing. But the problem is, you know, if I want to bring the comics into it, I can be like, Batman doesn't kill for A, B, C, and D. But like watching the movie, it's just like, this guy just shows up in a bat car and like takes people out left and right. He's just as evil and twisted as these other guys, and there's no moral code. There's nothing that separates them from him or him from them. So I don't know. I just there's this.
I agree with a lot of what
that,
you're saying. I don't think they properly established the moral code of this particular Batman in either the '89 film or the Batman Returns. So I agree with you on that front. And yes, it is without a doubt a very goofy and silly movie, and that tracks right into Batman Forever and Batman Beyond and comes directly from the camp of the 66 series. But like for me, now that I have like given up my childhood disgust and weirdness surrounding all the emotions that erupt from all this grotesque imagery, now I look at it and I just fully engage with the Tim Burton madness of it all.
Yeah, there's an angle there to be appreciated. I will agree with that. You guys kind of helped me appreciate Tim Burton a little bit more. So watching it from that angle, I was like, I kind of do appreciate that Burton was like, oh, really? I can do it. Oh, well, okay. I'll do whatever I want then. I think it's just like his take on the character just is not it's not as interesting to me. And it just...
For me, this is where Burton really kind of does his hybrid version of what Burton is and what a comic strip would be. And he kind of fuses that. And the thing that Burton seems to really gravitate towards, which I think we've kind of seen throughout his entire filmography, is that he gravitates towards the weirdos. Such a big part of this was, especially the villains. Yeah, you have Batman, he's your hero. But I feel like you can just say, he's a hero, he's there to fight crime. I don't know if I need that much more to like be defined for my hero. I kind of get everything else that's kind of like iffy about the character, but when it comes to the Penguin, there's a lot of, especially when you hear it in the music, there's a lot of sympathy for the Penguin.
Yes,
he's dismissed by his parents.
Not dismissed by his parents, murdered by his parents.
He wasn't murdered.
He was dumped in a river and fell into a sewer.
So,
the parents were killing that
Noah.
baby.
No, Moses.
No.
Moses.
They were not Mosesing this child. This
Get
is
your
not
Bible stories right, people.
No. This is not Superman.
So
this is not Moses. This is two parents who are disgusted by their mutant child, and they dump him into the sewers. Like, it is a brutal origin for the Penguin. And if you want to talk about sympathy, like that, I understand. I relate to the Penguin in this movie, not Batman.
No, I agree with you. That's what I'm trying to say, is that a dismissal, a throw down the garbage chute, wherever you want to say, he is completely, the parents are just like the worst things for him. And so he essentially runs away with the circus. He's only accepted by freaks. This is literally the Tim Burton story.
Yes.
There's like, this is the lonely goth kid, like, looking for attention and looking for somebody to recognize him and to find other people that feel the same way that he does. And that's why I find the Penguin such an interesting character. But even beyond that, Catwoman is one of the best characters of the entire franchise, full stop.
I can agree with that.
Agreed.
Michelle Pfeiffer's performance is perfect. The costume is out of this world. The way she portrays the character is fantastic, and it's another one of his little, like, Tim Burton fantasies, because it's, he's finding that duality of it's the female side to the Batman freak, and it works completely for me.
I'll clarify. I think some of the stuff she, like, again, a lot of like the humor in this movie feels like Schumacher to me. I think, again, it baffles me that people are so against Schumacher, and yet it's all here in Batman Returns. So a lot of that comes through in Catwoman's character. That being said, Michelle Pfeiffer is great. She's great. Like, Danny DeVito is amazing. I don't get it. Like, so Bruce Wayne's attraction to Selina is initially because he's like, oh, she's a hot secretary and I like her. The way Bruce Wayne behaves, like when he's not Batman, is baffling to me because he cracks jokes and he's not like brooding or darker at all. And then all of a sudden he's like, no, I found somebody. We're the same, Selina. I finally have you in my life. Please, please. It's just like I don't get a single bit of tragedy from Bruce Wayne when he's just hanging around the manor with Alfred. Just he's a real goofball. Yeah, it just doesn't mesh for me. But that being said, the same way there was a like little gem, like you were saying, Brad, in Batman 89 with the parallels of the Joker and Batman. There's a gem in this movie that's the Bruce and Selina relationship that again just it never works for me because Batman doesn't seem to want anything except to have a girlfriend. Like it's like all he wants in either Batman or Batman Returns is he's like, oh, Vicky Vale, maybe she'll help me. In Batman Returns, he's like, oh, someone I can relate to. I need this person. It's like, so does Batman just? He's clearly lonely. It's a very Burton theme, like this guy who wants to be understood. Selina Kyle is very like, she is the perfect person to understand him. But like that seems to be the only thing that drives Batman is just this need to be like loved by somebody. It's just it feels weird to me.
Watching Batman Returns, you get the impression that Tim Burton is saddled with the Bruce Wayne character. He wants nothing to do with this character. Please get him out of my movie. I have written a film. It's called Penguin Begins and Ends, and that's the film I'm telling. And I'm stuck with all these deleted scenes of Bruce Wayne still in the cut. That's what Batman Returns feels like, and I agree with you, but I feel a lot of pain for the Penguin. And I think Danny DeVito is great in the movie, and everything around the Penguin character I really appreciate. And yes, the Catwoman performance, Michelle Pfeiffer, is stunning in it. I love her anger. I love her sensuality. I love her hatred of Max Schreck as played by Christopher Walken. And I love Christopher Walken as Max Schreck. The most Schumacher character in the Batman, first two Batman films.
He does have my favorite line in the movie, which is near the end when after Bruce rips off his mask and is like, Selina, we're the same. Max Schreck goes, Selina Kyle, you're fired. And Bruce, why are you dressed like Batman? I don't know why. That's so funny to me. But that's by far my favorite line in the movie. Bruce, why are you dressed like Batman? You fool. He is Batman. Shoots him. I'm like, this movie is
He had a hell of an arc.
I'm telling you, this movie, part of why I didn't dislike it as strongly as previous viewings is about a quarter of the way through, I was like, this is a comedy. It's a dark comedy. It's not a serious movie at all. There's an undercurrent of tragedy to it, absolutely, but I think the Penguin is too absurd and gross to be really sympathetic.
Yeah, right.
I think Catwoman is too ridiculous to really earn my affection. Everyone in this movie is too extreme.
It's called melodrama.
It just doesn't work because it doesn't feel grounded in any reality.
It's not grounded. Art doesn't have to be grounded.
Even something like Ed Wood, which is so stylized, I felt like there was a kernel of human emotion, and I don't get that in either of these Batman movies.
All right.
Except for Batman Forever.
Oh boy.
Nope. But to that, I think. I think there might be something worth saying that, you're saying that you realized it was a like sort of a dark comedy. And I think, I can't remember how many we said that you had seen of Tim Burton's filmography, but that's always been a part of his format. And so I wonder if you had been bred on Burton, from a young age with Beetlejuice and with Pee-wee and all that other stuff. I wonder if all that other stuff had kind of permeated, if it would just kind of allow itself to be easier to digest. I don't know.
I think possibly. I do, like I said, I think seeing where Burton came from and getting more of a feel for his style helped me get through Batman Returns this time around. I think at the end of the day, I can't separate my love of Batman from Burton's take on the character, and it just doesn't. They don't click for me. Like I'm like, I know what Batman is. I know what I want him to be, and Burton's take just isn't that. And beyond that, I would get it if it was like, oh, but it's Burton's take. It's kind of like it's his own thing, but it's not even interesting to me. Like his version of the character is like a less interesting. It's like, oh, he's just a freak like everybody else, and he's just wants to bang a freaky girl in a garbage bag suit. Like his take on it is not as it's not compelling enough. It's not compelling enough to hold my interest, which I think is part of the problem. But I don't know.
I mean, fair enough. I don't think we're going to convince you otherwise, and I'm not here to convince you otherwise. But I think what is really telling about Batman Returns is that when it came out, half the people that saw it said this is too darn funny for Batman, and the other half said this is too darn disgusting for Batman.
Right.
It's a very bizarre mixture of tones, and it doesn't. I agree, it doesn't quite work, but I appreciate the madness of it all.
But I'm glad you brought that up. The box office numbers weren't bad for Batman Returns, but the first Batman was such a huge thing that Batman Returns' moderate success was seen almost as a failure. And a lot of it was attributed to the more extreme tone of Burton. So they very clearly took a step away from that and were like, how do we sell action figures? How do we sell toys? Let's figure that out first, and then we'll maybe make a movie as well. But before we move on, how many... what should our rating system for this one be?
A raw fish.
How many raw fish? How many blood gushing noses would you give Batman Returns? Aaron, you go first. We'll start with Aaron. We'll go alphabetically by first name.
This is a superb Batman movie with a stellar antagonist, and Catwoman is perfect. This is a 4-star. Dead fish gushing nose sort of
Brad.
Well, when I'm talking to Shawn, I give it 5 gushing noses. But when I'm talking to my letterboxd, I give it 3.5.
Yeah.
I think before my rewatch, I would have given this like 1 star. No joke. I really hated it. I think this rewatch, I would just bump it up to 2, same as 89. I don't like it, but I appreciated the Burtonness of it more. And like I said, it's a dark comedy. Once I started watching it from that angle, I was a little less put off by it.
And next time you watch it, just fast forward through all the Bruce Wayne scenes.
Those are some of my favorite. I love, first of all, I love that he has a bat signal that projects into his study. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
he doesn't hang out with anybody.
Out his window.
Yeah, it's a good thing Selena Kyle didn't make out with him during the bat signal appearing. But like, I loved. Bruce feels a little looser in this movie. I did like that. Like Batman and Bruce feel a little more like it's a little less like serious, a little less stiff. Like I love the moment where Alfred he's like, oh, like when you let Vicky into the cave. Like thanks, Alfred. I thought that was really funny. I loved that callback because a lot of these movies, it's like they never mention the girl from the previous movie, and I love that comment specifically because so many fanboys were so pissed off about it, and rightfully so. It was a really dumb moment, but I love that they just address it head on. There are little things like that about Batman Returns that I appreciated, or when he's driving in the Batmobile and he's trying to turn it into the Bat missile to get through that narrow alley, and he kind of goes, "Uh-oh, this isn't good." It just felt very like, this is kind of nice that he's not so stiff and serious. He's kind of making little wisecracks. So I did like that. Don't like anything else. But let's go. So Burton by this point is done. He's decided, he's like, I can't do anything else. It doesn't seem like the studio wants me to do anything else. And I guess
I'm gonna go do Superman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is even weirder. But like, I don't know does anyone know what the story is about Schumacher getting hired? Like what he'd done that they were like, yeah, let's get this guy to do a Batman movie.
Well, I mean,
feel like
he made a ton of really interesting movies by this point, including The Lost Boys.
Yeah, he just did. Did The Client.
Yeah, The Client. Yeah,
but those movies are like they're R-rated, kind of like. It just feels like, oh, let's make the kid-friendly Batman movie. It just feels like Schumacher. What a strange choice. And then it turned out to be an on-point choice, but not necessarily the best choice. But let's talk about Aaron. Since we're going in alphabetical order now, we have a method to the madness. Aaron, do you remember the first time you saw Batman Forever?
Oh, yeah. This was definitely in the theater. It was definitely first week because I definitely had all four of my... I was probably holding all four of the McDonald's glasses in my hand at the same time. The Riddler, the Two-Face Batman and Robin glasses promotional
Aaron, do you
stuff.
still have those?
No. I think they're at my mom's house
They are
somewhere.
at my
I'm sure
mom's house.
You think they are. You know 100% they are.
No. We still drink from them to this day. Not joking.
I'm sure you do. They were good glasses, quality stuff. No, but I remember seeing. I'm pretty sure I loved this when I was younger. I'm almost positive I did. And another thing that really completely got me, because it only took over like the whole summer, was that soundtrack.
Yeah.
Especially "Kiss from a Rose" just was everywhere. And yeah, so I loved it at one point in my life.
Brad, what about you?
Yeah, I remember seeing it in the theater the first time, and I also was really into it because I was coming off of my hatred of Batman Returns at the time. I fully embraced.
We were also dumb kids. We were dumb kids. What can we say?
Yes.
Okay?
Well, Brad, how were
Back
you a teenager when Batman Forever came out?
Let's see. When's Batman Forever? 1995. I was
5. Yes.
I was 16, my friend. I was driving around.
Nice.
And
I feel
was
like this
way
movie. Like
into
I'm surprised you enjoyed it because it definitely feels like I was 9 when I saw it, and I feel like that was the perfect age to see this movie.
No, like I think I had really confused myself into believing that Batman Returns was the silly one and that this was a more comic book appropriate version of the character. And I was excited by this new visual flair that Schumacher was bringing to Batman Forever. So I was way into it. And then, 3 years later, when Batman and Robin came out, I was like, oh, this is terrible. But now when you watch Batman and Robin and Batman Forever together, you go, nope, they're pretty much on the same page.
They're the exact same.
No.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
Oh my God.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So
yes.
I, like I said, I was 9 when I saw Batman Forever. First Batman movie I ever saw in theaters. All I knew about it was like he fights more. The fight scenes are better. It's more colorful, and also Robin's in it. This is the best movie I've ever seen. That was basically it. I had a bunch of action figures, but I remember really liking it just because it was very clearly like there was something more bombastic about it. It felt more grand in scale. Like Batman and Batman Returns feel kind of low key in some ways. Like they feel more muted. As ridiculous, I know we've just gone on about how ridiculous Batman and Batman Returns are, but compared to Batman Forever feels like it has more. Like, I think you're on point, Brad. I think it feels very comic booky, and the reason I think it's the best one of these first 4 movies is for the first time Batman is the main character in his movie, and it is the only one that tries to explore the character of Bruce Wayne. It is true.
But even if that was true, here's the problem there, is that your Bruce Wayne is played by Val Kilmer, and
hold on.
That just doesn't work for me at all. He is so... No. He is so smug. It's just like, I just want to punch him in the face every time I see him. And then when he puts the... No, wait. And then when he puts the Batman cowl on, all I can focus in on are his big, pouty, stupid lips just poking out of that face mask. And it makes me want to punch that even harder. Like, I just don't get... This movie is so 90s.
I'm not comfortable with all this body shaming that you're doing to poor Val Kilmer. He's a handsome man, sir, and he fills out that suit quite well. And I actually like him as Bruce Wayne. I think he's a solid Bruce Wayne.
Okay.
I think again.
I think his Bruce Wayne is better. It's just like it's so smug, but that's kind of like,
that smugness is coming from your hatred of full lips, sir, and I will not have it.
I think that's it. He doesn't feel smug to me in this movie. He feels like genuinely lost and doesn't know what's going on. The most smug he gets is when he has the incredible line, "I've really got to get you out of those clothes." Excuse me? And into a black dress. It was like, oh, Bruce, just maybe work on your timing a little bit.
I mean, there's a lot of weird, problematic relationship stuff between Bruce Wayne and Dr. Chase Meridian, as played by Nicole Kidman.
But I got the vibe. He doesn't feel smug to me. He feels like kind of like, for the first time, he feels kind of like a real person. Like, I never really understood Bruce Wayne or Batman in the first two, but for the first time, it's like, oh, this is why he does what he does, and it's clearly tearing him up, but he still wants to do the right thing. That sounds a lot like Batman.
I mean,
they
put those words in his mouth, Sean, but like, I don't know if it's actually a revelation of character as much as just here's a bunch of exposition coming out of those beautiful lips of Val Kilmer's.
At least there was something. For the first time, it felt like Batman wanted to protect, to save people. And in the first two, I just felt like he.
I think you're just trying to make Batman your Superman, and it's just not going to happen, sir.
I don't need Batman to be my Superman. I just want him to the whole thing with Batman is there is a blurry moral code, but he is defined by certain things, and he's I won't kill anybody. I won't do this. All the best stories are they're about his struggle not to give in to that.
I mean, not necessarily. I will say.
I feel like the Dark Knight Returns, maybe not year one, but the Killing Joke, where I guess it depends on your interpretation of the ending. But so much of it is it hinges on.
He kills the Joker, Sean. He kills the Joker. It's called the Killing Joke. He kills the Joker. Grant Morrison is right.
I agree with you, but I know there are people who think he doesn't kill the Joker. I'm just saying Batman is a hero. He his whole reason for doing this is because he wants to protect people. He wants to prevent terrible things from happening to people. He's twisted, yes, but there is that part of him that separates him from the criminals. And in this movie, I appreciated the fact that he that he feels like a hero, like he's trying to do the right thing.
I think these movies are trying to make him a hero. I agree with you. I never have seen Batman as a hero. I see Batman as a broken human being, and that's the version of Batman that I appreciate the most. But yeah, they Batman Forever, especially. I think they throw the word hero around several times. He is very much a superhero. It's Dr. Chase Meridian's first superhero client, and she's very excited about that.
That's Art Rodin's Dr. Meridian.
But Batman Forever's biggest thing is it's made by a guy who goes, you know what? What's the big word in the phrase comic book is comic, and I want to heighten it to a comic sensibility. He really does want to bring Adam West's back to the franchise, and I think that's valid. I think that's totally valid.
Yeah, in a very big way, and I think the thing that I really reacted to with the first two Batman movies was that he was the type of hero that the cops didn't want to work with, and that there was there was a dual role of the type of hero that he was. In this one, it literally throws right back to the 66 Batman, and he's the very first scene he drops in at that bank where the Joker's or not the Joker, Two-Face
same diff
breaking into. Yeah, same guy. And he's working right there with Commissioner Gordon. It's just there's no no issues, no problems whatsoever.
Yeah, but at least there's
it was too clean, too simple.
There's an attempt to at least give him a relationship with Gordon, which is one of the most important relationships in Batman's whole franchise. It just felt not that it's none of these movies treat Commissioner Gordon with the respect he deserves. He's basically a bumbling guy who's well, what's going on? I love I love the moment in this movie where they light the signal and they're like, he's not coming. And then Batman shows up, gives them the thumbs up. And then Commissioner Gordon shakes his like fellow cop's hand as if they did anything. That's like the most Commissioner Gordon does in any of these movies. But you're absolutely right. It's an attempt. It's an homage to Adam West Batman. It's not good. It's not a great homage because the movie can't figure out what it wants to be tonally. It's like, is it serious and dark and exploring the psyche of Bruce Wayne, or is it Adam West Batman? It's like the villains come from the Adam West era, but the Batman character is like Tim Burton, what Tim Burton tried to do, like the seriousness of it. So it just doesn't work when Batman isn't in on the joke.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think in rewatching the Schumachers for this episode, I appreciate how different they are from really any other interpretation of the character. You know, yes, I recognize the Adam West influence, but it is very much a Schumacher movie. And I like that stuff. I actually like the day glow. I like the heightened Gotham of this film, how they take those small sets of the 89 Batman and Batman Returns and expand it out through some, early digital wizardry. That stuff all works for me. What does not work for me in Batman Forever are the two villain performances from Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey. That's where I can't deal. You talk about not being able to connect with some of the characters in the previous Batman Burton movies. The Two-Face and Jim Carrey Riddler, I hide from their performance. I hide from their persona. It's nails on a chalkboard.
One thing I did notice watching through these movies, again, Joker, Penguin, and Catwoman, they all have an edge to them. They're dangerous. Like, you are scared of them. You don't know what they're going to do. That is gone in the Schumacher movies. There is no danger with Jim Carrey Riddler. There's no danger with Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face. They're basically, Jim Carrey's being Jim Carrey, and Tommy Lee Jones is desperately trying to keep up with Jim Carrey, but really they both just end up being the Joker. Like, they're both being a version of the Joker. They're just crazy and cackling and being complete goofballs. But I think a lot of the problem with them is there is no sense of threat for Batman. It's like, if you gave Bruce Wayne a little bit more development, you lost the slightly interesting villains in the process.
I agree.
The Riddler's endgame is literally just to get smarter. That's
he wants to get revenge on Bruce because Bruce shunned him. It was so traumatic that he was like, he's you were supposed to understand. I'll make you understand. So his whole thing is he wants to get revenge on Bruce, and he wants to get smarter. That's it.
Your Jim Carrey is on point.
I love this movie. It's great.
Oh, bummer.
There is part of the appeal of this movie for me is the fact that it is so 90s, and so much of that is just Jim Carrey. Like, it is right at the cusp of his really taking off. It was, I think, Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber had just come out, so he was literally like rising star, and Batman Forever was like the thing that cemented it. And he is just like, in the same way I think Burton was like, yeah, Jack, just do that. Just keep being you. I think Schumacher was like, hey, Jim, yeah, do your thing. Everyone else, whatever. Don't worry about what they're doing. Just be you. But, like, amplify it.
I'll tell you what,
probably the worst direction to give Jim Carrey.
Yeah, never amplify Jim Carrey. Can you name another performance that Tommy Lee Jones has given that comes close to whatever the hell he's doing in this movie? No, you cannot.
No.
And it is wild to watch him. Like, it's it's my uncomfortableness with Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face is that he's behaving in such a manner. This isn't decent, sir. Please go, step away. Go make fugitive.
He is lost in this movie. He is out of his element. I have you guys heard the story of like Jim Carrey meeting him for the first time?
No.
Yeah, so Jim Carrey, he was like, "Oh, I know we're going to be working together." They like ran into him at a restaurant and was like, "Hey, I'm looking forward to working with you." And basically Tommy Lee Jones kind of took him aside and said, "I can't stand you."
Wow.
I think the words he used, according to Jim Carrey, were he said, "I cannot tolerate your buffoonery." That's what he said to Jim Carrey. So immediately Jim Carrey's like, "All right, this is going to be fun."
Yeah.
But you see it like Jones is, I always use this as an example. Dumb and Dumber, I adore that movie, and what makes that movie work so well is obviously Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels. But the reason Jeff Daniels is so good is because he's not competing with Jim Carrey. He is his own character. He does his own thing. He's not like the straight man, but he's not being Jim Carrey. Tommy Lee Jones didn't know what to do other than try to match Carrey, and you can't match Jim Carrey. So it's like that was the ultimate failure. Is one, he shouldn't be in this movie in the first place, but two, that he tries to match that level of energy, and it's just not right for him.
I've got a question, and it's maybe, before we move on, maybe more directed towards Brad. Do you think that you would have, or maybe now, would now react better towards this movie if there were not two Tim Burton movies? Like, do you feel like that set a tone for like, I want it to progress this way, instead of going like let's say like a Mission Impossible style where we get a new director and a new tone each movie?
You mean when I was 16 years old or today?
No, today. Do you think if because it feels like with two movies from one director, and it has like that setting, I feel like that's what it did for me. Is like when I look at it, if I had Batman 1 and then Batman Forever right after, no Batman Returns, I feel like I would react a little bit differently. I'd be a little more open to it because it's like, oh, it's just a different interpretation of this character.
Well, I mean, that is where I am right now. Like, that is my philosophy now. We have so many Batman movies, let alone Batman cartoons and Batman video games and Batman comics. Like, what I love about this character is what I was saying earlier, is that it allows for so many different interpretations, and that all Batman to me now are valid. And that's what I love about the character, is that everybody can run loose. So when I watch the Schumacher movies today, I don't hate them the way that I did maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And a lot of that has to do with Grant Morrison's run on Batman from around that time, because he was trying to show all the glorious stuff about the Batman of the 50s and the Batman of the 40s and the Batman of the 60s, and how they're all radically different, but they're all a piece of the tapestry. And so now I step back and I go, oh, this is all really cool and weird, and some of it I like more than others. But if I am taking Batman Forever only as its own thing, and this is the only Batman I have in my life, F this movie.
Oh, well, I guess final rating, 1 to 5, Val Kilmer's pouty Aaron anger-inducing lips.
It should be his mole that Jim Carrey's Riddler is so excited about.
His mole.
No, I like those pouty lips. I'm giving him 1.5 pouty lips, just the top lip and then half of the bottom lip.
What about you, Brad?
When I'm talking to Shawn, I'm giving him 1. When I'm talking to my letterbox, I'm giving it 2.
All right. Well, when I'm talking to Brad and Aaron, this gets 4.
Wow.
But I think genuinely, I would give it probably 2.5.
Okay. What did you? Hold on. Wait 1 second. What did you give Batman Returns again?
I gave that a 2.
And this is a 2.5.
2.5.
So
I'm not crazy.
No,
I know
I
this
think
isn't
so.
a great movie.
Just real quick.
I think it's ridiculous, and I think it is the only one of these 4 movies that tries to explore Batman as a character.
And that's the
I
element that
appreciate
gives you
that.
the half a star.
That and just the entertainment value of it. It feels like it feels like a grand entertainment to me. It's stupid, but there are set pieces. There's like quips. It has a larger budget. Like the first Batman and Batman Returns feel like kind of just like smaller scale, kind of grungy. Batman Forever feels more like, oh, it's a big summer blockbuster, and that's partly why I like it more than those first 2.
Okay.
Now on to the greatest film anyone has ever seen. Joel Schumacher, I guess because Batman Forever did really well at the box office and sold a lot of toys, they were like, hey, let's keep doing that. And everyone went off the rails and decided to make Batman and Robin. Is there anyone in this group who wants to defend this movie, Aaron?
It's a better movie than Batman Forever.
Yeah!
Yep, I'm putting it out there.
Sick.
First off, it's literally the same movie as Batman Forever. But the bonus is that we get Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay,
that's always a bonus.
Yeah, okay.
We get Uma Thurman, and she's on point. Those two together, they know exactly what movie they're in. Unfortunately, we get Alicia Silverstone, and she's awful. But there's so many different little beautiful. What are we laughing at?
Hold on.
I don't.
Arnold Schwarzenegger
I hear
is great. Uma Thurman is great. Alicia Silverstone, terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
Is she not?
I think she's on the same level as the other 2.
Oh, no way. She doesn't know what she's in. She's completely clueless, if you will.
Get the heck out of
We're
here.
waiting all night to do that.
Leave this
I literally
podcast,
didn't.
sir.
Well, wait a second. Wait a second, though, because okay, Arnold Schwarzenegger, yes, that's a given because what the hell is going on? He's Mr. Freeze. What's happening? But Uma Thurman is basically just doing Michelle Pfeiffer's bit in this movie. It's the same character as Michelle Pfeiffer. She's like, a nerdy kind of insecure, a secretary almost to another guy who murders her, and she comes back to life and is hot and sensual and trying to get into Batman's utility belt. It's the same thing, only not as good.
I do believe I told you Catwoman was the best figure of the franchise, so why not just do it again? Listen, I want to... I feel like you need to preface this with both of these movies are terrible. Terrible, awful movies. It's just that Batman and Robin is slightly better than Batman Forever. I know I'm in the minority. That's just Aaron's hot take of the day.
You're just being a contrarian.
Oh.
No.
No, I am not being a contrarian, sir.
Well, okay. First time... Do you remember the first time you saw Batman and Robin, Aaron, and what your feelings were then?
I honestly don't. I can't recall. I feel like I kind of feel like I didn't like it. I thought it was too goofy. I feel like I'm trying to think of what age I would be at that point. But I feel like I thought it was too kiddie.
Brad, what about you?
I first saw it in the theater at Centerville Multiplex in Virginia, and I hated it the first time I saw it. And I remember going, this is no good and nowhere near as solid as Batman Forever. And I have no idea why I thought that, because they're the exact same movie as far as tone and style. Some
of the plot beats and even the musical cues I feel like they took the musical cues from Batman Forever and just put that into the editing, whatever editing software they did, and they just cut the movie to that, because it feels like all the orchestral cues are exactly the same as they are in Batman Forever. First time I saw this, I was 10, and I was convinced this was the greatest movie I'd ever seen in my life until I saw Lost in Space the following year.
Oh my
and
God.
that became my favorite movie.
You poor child.
Yeah, Batman and Robin, it is awful, but I think the opening sequence is like camp brilliance. Like it is so absurd and ridiculous. But the second we get out of the Mr. Freeze sequence after Batman thaws Robin in a pool of hot water, and it cuts to the poison ivy stuff, I feel myself immediately tune out of the movie, and I'm like, I don't want to watch anymore. But I stand by. I think I would rather watch the first 20 minutes of Batman and Robin than either of the Burton movies.
Oof, boy.
Oh my!
God, shots fired.
Just for the moment when they get ice skates they kick ice skates out of their boots. And play ice hockey with the henchmen. That's it.
I love you, Shawn. I really do. I think if Batman and Robin was 20 minutes, I would probably enjoy it quite a bit. Unfortunately, It's 9,000 hours long. And I think, a lot of that initial pain in 1997 was the fact that this is the tail end of Arnold Schwarzenegger's career, before he goes into governorhood. And he was such an icon of my youth. The Terminator films and Commando and Total Recall and Predator. I adored those movies. I treated them like high art, and I still do. And to see him join the buffoonery of Schumacher's, and we'll even say the buffoonery of the Burton aesthetic too of performance, is almost as uncomfortable as it is to see Tommy Lee Jones attempt it as well. In rewatching it, I'm a little more into the vibe of Batman and Robin than I am Batman Forever, because I think once you go through the barrier of the third film,
let it out.
You now relax into the atmosphere of Batman and Robin. And so I think if I watch them in reverse, if I watch Batman and Robin first and then Batman Forever, I'd probably feel the exact opposite. But by the time I got to Batman and Robin, I'm like, yeah, okay, I get what Schumacher's doing. This is weird. I don't like it, but I'm into it. And yes, it is 9,000 hours long. And so if it was like 30 minutes, I'd probably really dig it.
Yeah, this movie feels like it just never ends. And it's the same problem with that Batman Forever had, where they want it to be an Adam West homage, but for some reason, like, they treat the Batman stuff deadly serious. Not deadly serious is the wrong term, but like, it's pretty straight face. Like, Batman and Robin are the straight characters, and they, in the Adam West TV series, are just as hysterical as the villains. And it's the tonal contrast that really makes these latter movies not work in the way that the Adam West series works. Like, it's just awkward. Like, the ice puns are too much. I know people say that all the time, but it's true. It feels painful to me. Like, Batman Forever, there's a little bit, there's a lot of it, and there's a lot of Jim Carrey hamming it up, but like, there's an emotional through line with Bruce Wayne's story. With Batman and Robin, they try to do something with like, oh, Alfred's dying, what do we do? But like, the camp factor feels so amped up in this movie. Like, I feel like Batman Forever has one foot in Burton land and one foot in this movie's land, and that's why I don't dislike it as much as Batman and Robin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything good we can say about Batman and Robin? Can anyone do that?
It's really great to see Coolio in a film, right?
Yeah, hanging out with a bunch of biker children.
There's
There's like a biker child gang member.
I don't know, from from a pure camp level. They spent a lot of money on these sets. They spent a lot of money on these suits, and it's kind of amazing to witness. So I appreciate it on that front.
Nipples.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no problem with the bat nipples. I don't understand the hang up. Like, I'm with Joel Schumacher. Roman armor was anatomical. Batman suit should be anatomical. My bat suit would have nipples, guys. Not a big deal. It'd also have bat dong, but let's not talk about it.
I'm glad we got that. That's, I think, all we really needed to hear.
Let's end on Bat Dong. That's perfect.
Yeah. Part of the reason I enjoy the Schumacher movies more than the Burton movies is because I don't know, the camp factor and the stupidness of it. Like, it is so bonkers. It just is like, what am I watching? And there's some element of that to Batman Returns, but the first two Batman movies feel like almost spiteful in a way, in a way that doesn't make me have fun watching them. Whereas Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, I can be like, this is insane and I'm having a blast. At least for the first 20 minutes of Batman and Robin. For the rest of the movie, I start to feel like, oh God, what's happening? Batman has a Bat credit card.
Oh, yeah.
Why is Robin screaming like a gorilla when Batman turns off his motorcycle? I can't get behind this. I also love when they make that jump and Mr. Freeze is laughing and then he goes, uh-oh, and Batman, as if he's a 5-year-old, and Batman knocks him unconscious, and it's like, wait, what just happened? And before you can even process what's happened, the big villain of the movie is laying unconscious on the ground, and it's like, is that it? What happened? Yeah. I love that this movie is so it's the type of movie that includes that moment, and it's terrible. But the soundtrack has Smashing Pumpkins on it, and
hard pass.
Yeah, and there's, oh God, how dated, the Gotham City by R. Kelly. Oh, jeez, this is Warner Brothers is probably going to want to go back and special edition the end credits of this movie to remove that song. But yeah, I don't know, guys. Batman and Robin. On a scale of 1 to 5 bat nipples, how many bat nipples would you give Batman and Robin? I feel like there's nothing. Is there anything more anyone wants to say about it? I can't imagine, but
I'm good.
No.
Yeah. All right. Bat nipples, go. Aaron.
I'm staying anatomical. 2 bat nipples.
Oh my God. All right. Brad.
If I'm talking to Shawn, I'm giving it 3.5 bat nipples. So that's 3.5 for Shawn. If I'm talking to Aaron, I'm giving it 1 bat nipple. And if I'm talking to my letterbox, I'm giving it 2 bat nipples.
All right. I'll give it I'd probably give it 1.5, which is funny. I think I would have rated Batman Returns lower prior to this rewatch, but I think Batman and Robin is probably still the worst. It's just so intolerable. But I will say I do enjoy watching it more as a whole, just because it's strange. It's a strange thing. But we did it. We made it.
Yeah.
What is it's a 90 we got 90 minutes of us talking about this insane franchise. I mean, Batman 89 is 30 years old. That's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a movie I might not like it as much as anybody else, but I do appreciate that we had Richard Donner's Superman, and then that franchise fizzled out, and then we had this completely different superhero movie. And
which equally fizzled out.
It equally fizzled out, but it opened the doors for so much, just like Superman did. And I don't think it's as good as Superman, but no. I do appreciate what it did for the genre.
Shawn, how do the Batman sequels, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, compare to Superman 2, Superman 3, and Superman 4, Quest for Peace?
God. Oh man, that's another episode. Superman 2 is decent. It's not great, but it's not terrible. Superman 3, I'd probably prefer to watch Batman Forever over Superman 3, and I'd probably prefer to watch Batman and Robin over Superman 4. But Superman, that franchise has the benefit of Christopher Reeve throughout all of them. And as terrible as those movies got, Christopher Reeve was always there trying to give it some amount of decency. So they get props for that.
And on this, we can agree.
Finally. But gentlemen, this has been such a pleasure, and I want to open the door for Aaron. You go ahead and start, and Brad, feel free to interrupt. But Aaron, tell the good people at home about the amazing Rest in Pictures podcast.
Absolutely. So it's the podcast that we focus on one cinematic figure, and we that has passed away, and we look at their entire filmography. We just did John Singleton on our last podcast, which was a great podcast. We actually had a guest on physics. He came on and we went everything from Boys in the Hood to Higher Learning to Shaft to Abduction. We did a lot of movies, and right now we're working on our Agnes Varda episode, so it's a lot of fun. Yeah. So you can find us at Rest in Pictures anywhere, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, all that fun stuff. You can find me. I'm at A Cool Hand Fluke. I'm usually saying inappropriate things I probably shouldn't be on the internet.
Like Batman and Robin is better than Batman Forever?
That's one of them. Yeah.
Brad, what about you? Tell the good people at home about ItModcast and your Twitter handle. Give us all the deets.
I can do that. When I'm not on Rest in Pictures, you can find me on the In the Mouth of Darkness podcast. You can follow us at ItModcast. We have a channel that's devoted exclusively to interviews called the ItMod Chatcast. We recently went down to New Orleans and partook in the Overlook Film Festival. We've got interviews with legendary filmmakers Larry Fessenden, Mick Garris, Adam Egypt Mortimer, all coming onto the show. Lots and lots of cool conversations in our near future. So find us there at ItModcast on Twitter and Instagram, all the social medias. You can follow me on all social medias at MouthDork.
And I am here on the Nerd Party Network every other week producing a Missing Frames episode. As I said, it's the show where we watch all the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives. And I am on Twitter at YayShondorman, on Instagram as Shondorman. And then feel free to follow the Nerd Party. We're on Twitter at Join Nerd Party, on Instagram, The Nerd Party, and also on Facebook as The Nerd Party. And if you like what you're hearing, give us a star rating on iTunes. Give us, like, all the bat nipples you can possibly imagine. We would greatly appreciate that. But send them exclusively to Mr. Brad Gullickson. Here is his home address. And that would be great. Gentlemen, thank you again. This has been a pleasure. I think we can all agree that we're going to need a bigger cave.
Yeah, for sure. And we can all agree that Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is the best Batman. All right, good night, guys.
This podcast is over.